Welcome to the TBC Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and like for more audiobooks. Imagine for a second you're sitting down with a really great book. One of those books that just completely pulls you in, and you're so engaged with the world the author has created. But then, right as you're getting to the good part, your phone buzzes with a notification. You try to ignore it, but you can't help but just glance at it, just for a second. And that second turns into minutes as you scroll through your feed. You know how it is? Before you know it, an hour has passed, and you've completely lost track of the book. It's almost as if you were never even reading it.
Yeah, and sadly, that's a pretty common experience. For many of us in today's digital world, it's like we're constantly being pulled in a million different directions, and our attention is just completely fragmented.
Yeah, it's like we're being bombarded with information and stimulation from every direction. It's overwhelming.
Exactly. And the really interesting thing is that it's not just a coincidence. It's not just a matter of us having poor self-control. There are actually powerful forces at play, vying for our attention, shaping our behavior, and ultimately profiting from our distraction.
This is where that idea of attention as a commodity comes in.
Right. Yes, exactly. Just like any other valuable resource, our attention is being mined, extracted, and traded in this vast and complex marketplace.
And the currency of this marketplace is engagement.
Right. You got it. The more time we spend scrolling, liking, clicking, the more data is collected about us, the more valuable we become to advertisers.
It's like being back in the 19th century. But instead of coal or oil, it's our attention that's fueling the engine of the modern economy.
It really is a powerful analogy. Think about it. Just like factory workers in the Industrial Revolution, their days were meticulously structured for maximum output. And today, our digital lives are being optimized in the exact same way for maximum engagement.
So every notification, every carefully curated piece of content, it's all designed to keep us hooked.
Right. Absolutely. To keep us scrolling, to keep our eyes glued to the screens.
So this isn't just about feeling distracted or unproductive. It's about something much deeper. It's about our agency, our freedom, our humanity.
You hit the nail on the head. This constant bombardment of information and stimulation can leave us feeling fragmented, disconnected, and ultimately powerless.
Because we become reactive instead of proactive.
Right, exactly. We're just responding to the latest notification or trend, rather than proactively shaping our own lives.
And this loss of agency can have huge consequences, not just for our own personal well-being, but for society as a whole. But before we get into that, let's take a closer look at how this system of attention extraction actually works.
Okay, so one key aspect is the rise of what we call persuasive design. Think about the apps and websites you use every day. They're not just designed to be functional. They're designed to be addictive. It's all very calculated. The colors, the sounds, the endless scroll, it's all carefully crafted to keep you engaged.
It's almost like slot machines in casinos that are designed to keep you pulling the lever. Even when you know you're probably losing money.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have the algorithms, these complex mathematical formulas that determine what you see in your newsfeed, what videos are recommended to you, what ads pop up on your screen.
So even the choices we think we're making are often being influenced by these unseen forces behind the scenes.
Yes. And this manipulation can be incredibly subtle. It's not about forcing us to do anything. It's about nudging us in certain directions, exploiting our psychological vulnerabilities, and shaping our behavior in ways that we may not even be aware of.
It's a little unsettling, isn't it? This idea that our attention, something so fundamental to who we are as humans, is being commodified and manipulated in this way.
It definitely is. And as we'll discuss further, the consequences of this attention depletion can be far-reaching, impacting not just our own lives, but the very fabric of our society. And this is where things start to get really concerning. This constant distraction, this constant pull on our attention, it actually impacts our ability to think deeply, to think critically.
Yeah, it's almost like our brains are being rewired.
Right.
To favor those short bursts of information.
Yeah.
And that instant gratification instead of sustained focus and deeper thinking.
Exactly. And there's actual research to back that up. Studies have shown that excessive exposure to this digital stimulation can actually impair our cognitive function.
So it makes it harder for us to concentrate,
Yeah.
harder to process information, and harder to form those complex thoughts that we need.
Precisely.
So it's not just about feeling scatterbrained. It's about actually diminishing our capacity for critical thinking.
And that has huge implications for our ability to have meaningful conversations, make informed decisions, and just participate effectively in a democratic society.
And that's where that Sirens Call metaphor really comes into play. It's like we're being lured away from rational thought and reasoned discourse by these seductive but ultimately destructive forces.
And the consequences of this societal attention deficit, they're quite alarming. It actually contributes to things like the rise of polarization, the spread of misinformation,
Yeah.
and even political instability.
Yeah, because when we're constantly bombarded with those sensationalized headlines and that outrage-inducing content and just these tiny little bite-sized pieces of information,
Mm.
it becomes so much harder to figure out what's true and what's false, and to engage in those nuanced debates to find common ground with people who have different viewpoints.
Exactly. We become more reactive, more susceptible to emotional manipulation, and less able to engage in that kind of thoughtful deliberation that's so essential for a healthy democracy.
It's like we're trading our capacity for deep thought and critical analysis
Mm.
for just this fleeting sense of connection and instant gratification.
It really is a dangerous bargain
Hmm.
because in the end, it's not just our individual well-being that's at stake. It's the very fabric of our society.
So it sounds pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? I mean, we're not just helpless victims in this attention economy. There have to be things we can do to reclaim control of our focus,
Right.
to resist that siren's call.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes this conversation so important. By understanding the forces at play, we can start to develop strategies and habits that help us navigate the digital world in a more mindful and empowered way.
So where do we go from here? How do we as individuals start to reclaim our attention in a world that's constantly trying to grab it?
Well, it all starts with awareness. Recognizing that Sirens Call for what it really is, this seductive but ultimately destructive force, that's trying to take control of our minds and our lives.
So we need to understand how this attention extraction is actually happening, and then we can start to develop strategies to resist it.
Exactly. It's about becoming more aware of how our attention is being used and making conscious choices about how we spend our time and energy.
Okay, so being more mindful.
Yes. And one really practical step is to set boundaries. You know, create space in your life for quiet reflection, for deep work, for meaningful conversations, for genuine connection.
So that might mean turning off notifications, setting aside specific times for device-free activities, or even taking a digital detox.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming control over our time and energy, about making those conscious choices, about how we consume information and how we engage with technology.
So it's not about rejecting technology completely. It's about using it more wisely,
Yeah,
more intentionally.
exactly. And it's also about cultivating a deeper understanding of ourselves.
Yeah.
Really taking some time to think about what truly matters to us. What are our values? What do we want to contribute to the world?
Because when we understand those things,
Then we can start to align our attention with our purpose
yeah.
and create a life that's more fulfilling and more meaningful.
So it's about remembering that we're not just passive consumers, but active participants in shaping our own digital lives.
Exactly. And as we become more mindful of our own attention, we can also start to demand better from the tech companies and the institutions that are seeking to control it.
So we can support businesses
Right.
that prioritize ethical design practices, advocate for policies that protect our digital well-being, and hold our leaders accountable for creating a more humane and sustainable digital ecosystem.
Absolutely.
It really has been an eye-opening conversation. It's clear that there are some really powerful forces at play in our digital world. And it's so important for us to become more conscious and more intentional about how we engage with technology. Your attention is precious. Don't let it be stolen from you. Reclaim your focus. Reclaim your time. Reclaim your humanity.